Good morning, everyone. A very warm welcome to Raga 2.0, where we are creating ripples of awareness, growth, and aspiration. This session is all about Dialogue Unplugged, and it's wonderful to see you, so many of you here, ready to engage, reflect, and connect with us. I'm Archana Parmar, a communication coach, happy to be here, and today I'm sharing this beautiful space with my co-host, Priyanka.
Thanks, Archana. I'm Priyanka, and happy to see all of you here and be part of what we believe is going to be an extremely insightful discussion, which will last not just today, but beyond this room as well. I am an internal coach with Amazon, and I'm really happy to share this space with Archana today.
Priyanka, you mentioned that you are an internal coach with Amazon. I've been running my own coaching practices for about 7-8 years now, and there have been moments of cluelessness, wherein I don't know what to do from here onwards. There's utter chaos, you don't know who to ask, who to connect with. I'm just wondering if it is just me or people who are running their own thing, they feel these things, or people in the corporate, since you have a strong career over here, do they also experience these kind of challenges?
Well, Archana, I can tell you that in the corporate world, things look pretty chaotic. There is this continuous, rapid technological changes that impact us all the time. Geopolitical shifts that come out of nowhere, out of the blue. There is our ever-changing workforce and working with our new team members. I think leaders of today have to navigate a lot of complexity, ambiguity, perhaps more so than we have ever seen in the past. And that brings us to how leaders do that. Well, one of my observations is they're not just experienced, they're not just super smart people, but a lot of them are also very, very self-aware.
Oh, that last line. They are smart, they are credible, and what we don't get to see is how aware they are. And maybe that brings us to the topic that we have here in this room today, self-awareness as a catalyst for sustainable leadership. And who else to talk about this than the guests that we have today who are leading their life self-aware. So our first guest of the day is Mr. Karan.
Karan, welcome. Karan Kumar is our reconnection coach. He's working at the intersection of leadership, identity, and transition. He partners with leaders who appear successful on the outside, yet feel conflicted within, composed in the boardroom, but replaying conversations in their head at midnight. His belief is simple, but confronting. Most leaders already know what needs to change. What they lack is a space to reconnect with their inner authority and act on what is already clear. With over 20 years of C-suite leadership experience and credentials spanning ICF ACC, EMCC, EIA, NLP, core transformation, positive intelligence, and transactional analysis, Karan integrates lived experience with rigorous practice. He doesn't just offer motivation, he offers clarity. Welcome again, Karan.
Wow, Karan. Thank you so much for doing everything that you are doing. And that takes us to our next speaker of the day, Mr. Sundeep Singh. Sundeep has spent nearly 2 decades helping organizations answer one of the hardest questions in business. How do you grow without costing the planet? As a managing director at Accenture's sustainability practice, he works on net zero transitions, circular economy, and resilient supply chains as real outcomes and not just light concepts. He has shaped industry thinking with the WEF, UNGC, and FICCI. But what makes Sundeep's story compelling is what he does when he's not in the boardroom. In 2019, he ran 100 half marathons in 100 consecutive days. I see the eyebrows rising. I see the surprise element. Sundeep, you have already shifted the room. You have already made us all aware. Not just for trophy, but to raise awareness about air pollution. That's not a fitness goal. That's a statement of purpose. Sundeep is also a published author. His debut book, Chasing the Horizon, follows a young IIT aspirant navigating life's toughest lessons. And in his second book, In the Long Run, it draws wisdom from the roads he's run. Things he says no classroom at IIT or IIM ever taught him. An IIT Delhi engineer, an IIM Kozhikode MBA, sustainability leader, runner, a master storyteller. Sundeep doesn't just talk about living purposefully, he lives it. Thank you, Sundeep, for doing everything that you are doing.
And now we'll just hand over to you, Sundeep and Karan. I know you can, just go ahead and share your own, insights about self-awareness. To kick you both off, maybe we can start with how you define self-awareness.
Sundeep and Karan.
First of all, it's a privilege to be here, and thank you so much for such a warm introduction. Sometimes when I get introduced like that, I wonder if it is me that is being talked about. Thank you so much for that. So yes, I mean, self-awareness is what we're going to talk about, and maybe I can share my perspective about what it means to me. For me, self-awareness is really about being consciously aware of your thoughts and beliefs, and seeing how aligned are your actions and reactions to those beliefs. And now two words are of essence in the way I define it. The first thing that I used was conscious. Just because these are your thoughts doesn't necessarily mean that you will be aware of these thoughts. They may be lying inside you as your thoughts, but you may still not be aware of these thoughts. So consciously aware of your thoughts and ideas, and how well aligned are your actions to those thoughts. It is entirely possible that since you may not be fully aware of these thoughts, your actions may not be aligned to these thoughts in the first place. And hence, what you go about achieving, what you go about performing as your actions, may not necessarily bring the joy and the kind of satisfaction that you want because there wasn't an alignment. So two things, consciously aware of your thoughts, Karan, and how aligned are your actions to those thoughts. Those are the two things that I think about when I think about self-awareness. Would love to hear your thoughts.
I'm still thinking. I'm trying to become conscious about my unconscious thoughts. Yeah, I think that's a great start. Great starting point. I just think that as people, we get into habits very soon and very easily. Because habits don't need us to think and question everything that we do. We get into an auto mode, therefore, which gives you a lot of comfort. Now, when that happens, at some level, you unconsciously stop thinking about a lot of things. Because you start taking things for granted. This is the way, this is the code, this is the method, this is the road to be traveled. Yeah? And slowly and steadily, somewhere, there is a certain disconnection that starts appearing between what you are doing and why you are doing, outside of the fact that you're doing it just because it needs to be done. You know what I mean? Do you guys do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah? So I think to pause once every while and to just take a third-party view of yourself on where you are, what you're doing, and most importantly, why you're doing it, I think is a starting point for self-awareness. It's a starting point for self-awareness. And I will just push that one step forward and go back to what Sundeep was saying. After you've understood why you're doing it, almost instinctively, you should also connect with yourself and say, how is it making me feel? Because sometimes we do things for a certain reason, but from the inside, we don't feel very nice about it. But you still do it. Why? Because people's expectations of us makes us do what we want to do. Or what, I don't know, we want to do, we don't want to do, but what we do. So pause once in a while to understand why we are doing what we are doing and how is it making me feel. I think those two things for me at some level tells a lot about the self-awareness story.
No, I think that's a great way to think about it. One of the things which comes to my mind, Karan, when I think about self-awareness, and somebody that I'm talking to is a coach, so I would love to hear your thoughts. Is there a moment in life when suddenly you become self-aware, or is it like a gradual process, or is it something which needs to be attained by the help of others? I know it kind of varies for everyone. I'll share my perspective in terms of how I have achieved self-awareness. But as a coach, I would love to hear your thoughts on how do you think that journey unfolding for people that you speak to, for the clients that you work with. Would love to hear how it pans out.
See, again, he's put me in the spotlight first. So, okay, here's what I'm going to say. There are two ways of looking at this, and I don't think there is one right answer to this. Sometimes, as part of our various engagements and interactions with other people, certain windows might open up which have traditionally been closed, or you weren't even aware that those windows existed. And therefore, you start questioning yourself and saying, okay, this sounds interesting. I haven't thought of this earlier. Maybe I should think about it. It could be in your professional careers. It could be about you as mothers. When you see your children growing up and beyond a certain age, not needing you as actively as they originally needed you at some point in time. And many other situations, right? So sometimes the window to self-awareness opens like that. Other times, there could be something which is a completely life-changing near-death experience, which forces a pause, which forces a certain discomfort, which forces a certain point where you stop and reflect. हो क्या रहा है भाई? क्यों हो रहा है? Where is this going? Where am I going? And if I keep going where I'm going right now, at the same pace, same speed, same direction, then where will I head? So sometimes it happens as a consequence of a forced interruption, which in most cases may not always be a very happy interruption. But in some other cases, it's just about an ongoing organic process of meeting some kind of people who ask you questions, and those questions make you pause and reflect. And I think that is where the coach comes in. The coach would typically step in to, I'm speaking for myself, I'm not saying all coaches need to be like that, but for me, a coach will typically step in, make you pause, make you reflect, make you recalibrate perhaps what your forward journey is going to be, and let go of you again, and see where that journey takes you.
I think that's wonderful to hear. And if I were to reflect about that one moment, which I feel kind of helped me create self-awareness for myself, it happened quite early in my career. This was about the end of class 10th. I was a young kid back then. And, like all parents, my parents wanted me to do engineering at that point in time. And I had absolutely zero interest in becoming an engineer. And my father, being from IIT Delhi, he wanted me to go to the same college. So he asked me to join FITGI. FITGI is, most of you might be aware, Forum for IIT JEE, right? So I said, okay, if that's what you want me to do, I'll do that. But then I started thinking that, is this what I want to do? The answer was no. So I started doing something very funny. I started leaving the house at 3 o'clock for my FITGI classes. And I would not go to the class. I would go somewhere. I would play cricket. I would hang out with friends. I would be conscious that I should not be sweating much because I have to go back home from a class, right? So I can't be sweating much. I would do whatever I want. And at 8 o'clock, 8 p.m., I would go back home and, Mama, aaj to kafi thak gaya, ye wo. I'll do that drama. I did this thing for 100 days. Like for good 4 months, I continued to do that. And there came a point in time when all of these actions started to reflect in my performance. I kind of scored about 2 marks out of 25 in one of the school tests. And that was like obviously a very embarrassing moment. Like, the class lowest was 2 and then the class second lowest was 11 and the highest was 25. So 2 and 11 to 25. So I was like by far a massive outlier, right? And as luck would have it, I went back home, I totaled the sheet and I found that it was not 2, it was 2.5. So the funny little kid that I was, the stupid little kid that I was, I thought it was legitimate on my part to go back to the teacher and ask for that correction. That, ma'am, this is not 2, this is 2.5. So I went back to the teacher. And she looked at the sheet. She was quite happy that, okay, ठीक है, इतने बुरे नहीं है किसी के, 2 नहीं है. She totaled, she found it was 2.5. She got confused. She again totaled. She was again confused. She looked at me. She asked me, how much is it? I said, ma'am, 2.5. Now, she had that look of disgust in her eyes that I cannot describe. I mean, my vocabulary does not allow me to describe the disgust that she had for me. She thought for a minute and she tore the sheet. She did not fix the marks. She just tore the sheet and handed it over back to me. And as luck would have it, this was at about 11:50 a.m. in the class. And all the people around me started cracking jokes that Sardar pagal ho gaya, 12 baj gaye, all of that stuff started. And that was a moment which I felt like was extremely embarrassing for me. I mean, I again can't describe how bad I felt in that moment. So I went back home. I did not throw away that sheet. I kept it like a prized possession. And by the way, 30 years down the line, I still have that torn answer sheet with me. It lies with my home real papers, like, the original papers of my house. It's resting next to that. I started preparing for JEE in a very serious way. I said that I now want to get into IIT not because I want to be an engineer, but because there is something which I want to achieve from within. Now that desire was not driven by what my parents wanted. It was not driven by what my colleagues wanted. It was not driven by what my teachers wanted. It was driven by what I wanted, right? And that to me became a tipping point in terms of understanding what self-awareness means. About a year and a half later, I got through IIT JEE. I got into IIT Delhi. After the end of my schooling, I went back to the teacher with that same torn sheet and I said, ma'am, can you please fix this? There is a totaling error. You need to fix this. At that point in time, when I asked earlier about a year back, I was in a position where you had all the right to be mad at me. But today, things have changed and I still want it fixed because I was not asking for any grace marks. Howsoever small it was my half a mark and I still want it back. Now she was now confused. She was like, what is wrong with this guy? And but with a very different emotion. It was not that expression of disgust that I had seen. It was an apologetic expression that she had. She took a pause for about 5 to 10 seconds and then she wrote on the answer sheet, it is 2.5. I stand corrected. Well done. Wherever you go in life, I will cheer for you. That was the tipping moment for me. Now, and by the way, that teacher is still in touch with me. I mean, she's obviously retired now. But amongst all the friends I have made in the last 4 decades, she is the one who is right next to my parents in terms of how much I value her. Because had it not been for that moment back in the day, I would not have been sitting here. So for me, it happened in that sense. That was when I started becoming self-aware. But good to know, I mean, how you, from a coaching perspective, are thinking about it.
Yeah, I think, so the important part is a very, very nice word that you use, the tipping point, right? So what I was saying was, when things change, it could be gradual or it could be a life-changing moment. But I think the tipping point or an inflection point or a reflection point, I think they're very appropriate ways of describing that. And let me introduce something here. Now, when he was a student, when you were a student, your definition of success was in a certain moment where breaking the rule to go about and play cricket when the rule said that you have to go for coaching class was something that you were successful in doing, right? So you look at yourself from that point of view and say, what was my marker of success at that point of time? To break the rule and to play the practice game versus the coaching thing, right? At some point of time, it changed to getting admitted to the IIT, which was not originally the objective, right? So at that point of time, what did you do? You made certain other behavior changes to now help you prepare to now get admission into IIT, right? So what I'm trying to bring out here is that success is success only in the context in which it is lived. There is nothing called the universality of success. There is nothing called the entirety of a success as this person is entirely successful or this person is entirely unsuccessful.
Absolutely.
Success lives in context. There was a context when you wanted to bunk class and play game. Being able to do that qualified you to be success. Then there was a context which says that I want to now get admission, became success. Very often what we do is we assign labels to people at a very universal level. You are a successful student, you are an unsuccessful student. You are a successful wife, unsuccessful wife. Successful son, or a good son and a bad son. My invitation as a coach will always be that look at success, because that's what we're discussing as part of this, and through self-awareness, in the context that you're living. Because what could be a marker of success in one context may change in another success. And if you don't change and you keep doing more of the same, you will start finding that misalignment taking place inside of you. मैं कर तो रहा हूँ, लेकिन क्यों कर रहा हूँ समझ में नहीं आ रहा है और अंदर से अच्छा भी नहीं लग रहा है. But I'm still doing it. Yeah?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's a very powerful insight that you're sharing, Karan, that the definition of success itself evolves, and the only definition that you need to care for is the one that comes from within, not from outside. So you are right in saying that at some point in time, getting into IIT was a definition of success for me. It became something else once I was there. It became something else once I was in the corporate world. And we talked about the fact that I ran 100 half marathons in 100 days. So it could not have been driven. I mean, that entire effort.
100 consecutive days, not just 100 days. 100 half marathons in 100 consecutive days.
Yeah. And something like that could not have been driven by the traditional metrics of success. Like a traditional metric of success is how fast you get promotions and what's your pay grade, what's your square footage, and all of those KPIs that we either talk about consciously, at least if not talk about, think about for sure, that where am I in terms of where my peers are. But something like that, something insane as that, would not come from those traditional metrics of success. So quite clearly, how I thought about success back in the day had changed. And when my son, who is now 16, turning 16 in this month, when he looks at me, he always looks at me as somebody who's a superhero. He says that, "Aap IIT gaye, aap top kiye, IIM gaye, young MD bane." He thinks of me like that. And I always worry when he thinks of me like that. I always worry that, this is not the definition of success that I want to implant in his mind. At such an impressionable age, when I look back at my journey, I don't evaluate or judge myself because of these either degrees or grade points or positions or ranks and all of that. I might have been pursuing all those things which I have attained now, but when I think about my success, I don't think I was successful because of that. I think I was successful because every time I fell along the way, I had the courage to get up back. That's what I want him to understand. And this is not a definition of success that teachers will teach you. This is a definition of success that I have realized from within. So absolutely with you when you say that these definitions evolve. Now, coming to that 100 half marathons in 100 days, what triggered that? There was a point in time when I was getting overly worried and depressed by all the hoopla that we have about air pollution in North India. Every year, come the Diwali time, it gets so bad that sometimes you have to shut down schools and whatnot. Asthma problems start to take off and all of those things happen. And every time I would talk to somebody as a sustainability professional, everybody would have a point of view that government should be doing this and that person should be doing this, that person should stop bursting crackers and they should start carpooling. Nobody talks about what I should be doing as an individual. So that's what I thought, that I went back home and I said that, what can I do as an individual? And I felt that there is so much power in educating and in spreading best practices. But then who would listen? I mean, I can start shouting at the top of my voice from the top of a terrace, but nobody wants to listen. So I said, let me create a window of attention by doing something which qualifies as insane. Now, somebody who has spent more time solving complex numbers and calculus problems than playing cricket, like me, running 100 half marathons in 100 days was something insane, which would grab people's attention. I mean, back in the day, I could not even run 100 meters. Forget about half marathons and 100 half marathons. So I said, ye karte hain. This is something which will definitely grab people's attention. And, in that window of attention, I will run a social media campaign, which was called Right to Breathe campaign. Yeah. Right? So the idea was that in that window of attention, I will spread the word. Now, this doesn't align to any of those traditional metrics of success. It came from within. It did not come because I felt like by doing that, I will get more publicity, or by doing that, I will get more remuneration or anything. It had absolutely zero return. If anything, I was risking myself because God alone knows how those 100 days could have panned out. But when you say that these definitions evolve, I just completely agree with that.
Yeah, and wonderful point on traditional metrics of success, right? Because what are these traditional metrics of success? Who decides them? Who defines them? Are they passed on to you? Do you inherit them? Is somebody hands you down? What is this traditional, metrics? Here's a very, very super successful managing director of a consulting firm who decides to do 100 days of running, right? In that time of the year which others don't want to, right? And he set that as a goal for himself. What has he done here? And people would have thought कि पागल हो गया ना सरदार, घर वाले भी ऑफिस वाले भी, है ना? What has he done? He's taken a break from his practice, the work practice, 100 days of half marathon. I'm sure you'll speak more about that. He's taken a break. So therefore he's taken a pause. He's reflected on where he was, the journey and the momentum with which he was traveling, in the direction that he was traveling. And then he said that I want to now do something different. And I want to recalibrate, maybe change the direction, maybe change the pace, maybe change both. Because now for me, for the next, 6 months, 1 year, the definition of success that I'm setting for myself is to be able to successfully run 100 half marathons. So look at somebody who's a pure play, hard-coded number, Excel, PowerPoint, managing director, super successful firm, how he has changed what success is supposed to mean. And that itself is an example of a beautiful pivot, right? Otherwise, what you could end up doing, a lot of us do, is we keep doing more and more of the same, more and more of the same. Which therefore then brings me to this point that I'll also bring up here, which is that I mentioned this earlier, success is lived in the context. When the context changes, then what you do needs to change. If you are living what you are doing in the new context, based on what you are doing in another context, then it's going to feel misaligned. Does that make sense? Right? I will keep doing more of the same, but I am 20 years older now. Will my body support that? Am I recognizing my new context? No. Can I do things which are more appropriate for my new context? Yes. Do I always do them? No. Because that forces me to think and put pressure on my brain versus carrying on in the same momentum. Right? So the final point that I'll make here is that as context evolves, your actions and your markers of success need to evolve. You cannot pass a judgment on how successful you are in a current context based on a previous context. Does that make sense somewhere? Yeah?
No, absolutely. And I'll share something when we think about self-awareness. So, as I said, I made a social media commitment. I said, I'm going to run 100 half marathons in 100 days. And just to make sure that there are no exit options, I put it on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, everywhere, so that there is no coming back from this. I wanted to deliberately close all the exit routes, right? Now, and that's where, this entire journey of becoming self-aware is such an ongoing process. You can never say that you have fully become self-aware. I mean, the journey might have started when I finished my class 10, and I'm getting self-aware more and more every single day. So, first 2 days, 3 days passed with a lot of excitement. I was on the streets, I was running, and everyone who would notice me, they will wave hands at me, and they'll be like, bravo, yay, yo, all of that energy was there. And I was like really feeling like great. Everybody is applauding me, and I'm getting a lot of recognition. 7 days later, body has fatigued. 7 days of consecutive half marathons, body has started to feel the pain, and people have started becoming used to it. Now it is no longer a novelty. It is like, kar raha, pagal ho gaya, theek hai, it's fine. They will still kind of sometimes look at me, and sometimes they will give me a high five and all that. But the energy level started to drop, and that's where I realized that for me to go forward with this communication that I have made on the social media, I'm not going to be able to lean in on all the external stimulus which was coming my way in the first week. Yeah. If I have to continue, it has to come from within, because every day now, with each passing day, this applause is going to die down. It will become business as usual. But I don't have an exit route. I have to continue. And God knows that I'm only on the 7th day. I didn't even know what I had signed up for, because 93 more days of half marathons was taking a pounding on my body. So I realized that first thing, that all of it has to come from within. every single day, I would question my choices. I would think about what am I doing with myself. And that's where a lot of gray area comes into picture. You start to think about, is this right? Is this wrong? Am I justified in now taking a break and say that, okay, I made a mistake? Or do I need to necessarily go ahead even when it is so painful for me? And that's where I realized the second thing, that all the answers that you're looking for, they lay deep within you. You ask for validations, you ask for confirmations, you ask for, just a certification that yes, this is the right thing to do. But at the end of the day, what is right for you is resting deep within you. You know it. You always know what is right to do. You may or may not do it because of whatever XYZ reasons, but you know what is right for you. In that moment, I think the right thing to do for me was to continue with it. Simple and sweet. Now, I'll make one final point and I'll hear your thoughts, Karan. If it is that simple, if it is that straightforward, that everything rests within you, then how is it like some people are able to live the code while others are not? One is that some people are not even aware of that their deliberate, conscious beliefs. But if you are aware of those, there are people who are still not able to live the code. And why is that? And I think what I realized for myself was that while you may be aware of your thoughts and beliefs and aspirations, to be able to practice it, you need to put forward a set of rules and guidelines which are non-negotiable. And I did that for myself. I said that the more I negotiate with myself, कि आज दर्द बहुत ज़्यादा हो रहा है पैर में, आज मेरा पैर इतना सूज गया है कि there is, the shoe would not fit up. The shoe would not go onto my foot. After the 15th day, the shoe stopped going onto my foot because it had been swollen so much. Now, if I start negotiating inside my mind, there are two voices, me and me. One voice is saying that this is okay. I mean, with the state that you are in, it is okay to not run. And the other is saying that you need to run because you made a commitment and it's for a cause. Now, which voice is right? I said the more I allow that negotiation to go in within me, the more weaker I am becoming. So rule number one, no negotiation. Right? Absolutely no negotiation, no space for negotiation. I have to show up at the start line and we will see. We will take it from there. So that became a lifelong rule for me, that not showing up is not an option. You can go there, you can fail, you can falter, you can do whatever, but not showing up is not an option. And over a course of time, I have created those rules for myself. And those rules have come from self-awareness. Nobody has defined those rules for me. The first rule is absolutely showing up is necessary, not showing up is not an option. So the point I'm trying to make is that all of this thinking, all of this awareness of who you are, what you want to do, comes from within. Nobody can build it upon you or entrust it upon you. It has to come from within. Whether it comes through some external help, whether it comes through some kind of introspection, I mean, those paths could vary, but they have to come from within.
I think that's a very, very beautiful, very powerful point, and I'll just make two quick further additions on that before we close this part of this conversation. One is that awareness comes from you, comes from inside of you, yes, for sure. But the other point is that discipline always trumps passion. Yeah? Passion can go up and down. There are some days you feel very passionate about something, some days it goes down. But the discipline of what Sundeep is saying, to just show up, even if I'm not feeling very passionate or good about it today, or on some day, but to still just show up. I think that is a very powerful thing to do, because then you are not letting external factors overrule what your schedule that you want for yourself to be. Yeah? I think that's a very, very, very powerful point. But I will just quickly add to something that Sundeep said. Sometimes we know what we need to do, but we still don't do it, right? And I think one of the reasons we don't do it is because we feel insecure and scared. Because having done something in your life and reached somewhere where you become successful, you know that this is no longer my reality. I have outlived this skin. Snake skin. Snake outlives the old skin, gets the new skin, right? But this is what has made me get here. You know the same thing is not going to take you further. You will have to do something else. But to do something else, you need to do something from scratch which you haven't done before, and you feel vulnerable. Should I do it, not do it? What happens if I fail? Will people laugh at me? Will I laugh at myself? Will family laugh at me? Friends laugh at me? So sometimes you keep doing it, knowing fully well that what you're doing is no longer fitting your new identity. Your actions are not in congruence with your own evolving identity. And when that happens, there is a schism that starts operating. Yeah? There's a gap that starts, external validation starts hiding internal misalignment. External validation starts hiding internal misalignment. And that ultimately leads to a huge, deep fracture. And when that fracture happens, you'll typically hear people say that I have burnt out, or I'm finished, or I'm, whatever, all those negative words. Yeah? So sometimes you know what you need to do, but you still don't do it because you feel scared, you feel nervous. And I think in those moments, a coaching conversation can certainly help. It certainly helped me as a client, and I hope I can bring the same to the table for my clients as well. I'll close with that.
Perfect. How are we doing on time? I'm sure we want to have some questions as well. So.
Yes. Thanks, Sundeep and Karan. Yes, we could listen to you for hours. And for now, I'm sure after all the beautiful conversations we had, we do have questions for the board group. Before that, I actually wanted to, just sum up some of the things you mentioned. So many learnings, by the way, so many pearls of learnings from the two of you today. Your own definitions of self-awareness, the fact that it comes from deep within, the moments of pause that may be forced on you, or that a coach can help you create a moment of pause that can help you, reconnect with yourself. Your definitions of success, the fact that it changes over time, Karan's universality. Oh my God, I'm not going to say that again. Shit. Okay. So the fact that it changes over a period of time, your courage to step out of your comfort zone, to do something that others will judge you for, but to still do it. And what's your guardrail? What's your framework for going ahead with something that is courageous, your own self-discipline, and how do you make yourself non-negotiable during those times? It's an absolutely beautiful conversation. Thank you so much, Karan and Sundeep. Really, really enjoyed the discussion. And I don't want to take any more time. We will open the floor now for questions. And there is a hand raised already. Please.
Having worked with Accenture, one of the questions I had is that people at leadership do run marathons. So I know that that's a practice in music. So, but Sandeep, how has it shaped you as a leader? So I love the discipline and all aspects, but as a leader, how did it shape you?
Sandeep, before you answer, a marathon, half marathon is 21.1 kilometers. He's been running 100 half marathons on 100 consecutive days. 100 seems to be his favorite number because he bunked his FIITG classes also for 100 years, 100 days. Over to you, Sundeep. Yeah.
It's a practice I know for sure in Accenture. But how has it shaped you as a person?
So I think when I run, what I've realized is that I entertain the thoughts that I have been shunning consciously, right? It's a space where I don't judge myself. I allow anything and everything to come to my mind. And that is where I think running has introduced me to myself on a first name basis, if I can put it that way. I have started understanding who I am. I have started understanding that a lot of times we think of ourselves very highly after having achieved something. But what I realized was that it's never you who is doing anything. A lot has had to happen in the past for you and I to be having this conversation here. And I cannot be taking credit for that. My parents have made sacrifices, my teachers, my colleagues, everybody has worked. Consciously or unconsciously, directly or indirectly, implicitly or explicitly, but people have started playing a role in your life which has brought you to this moment. So the one thing that I have realized is that never flatter yourself too much when you are successful, and never be too harsh on yourself when you are not successful. And that has started to create an impact in the way I think about my colleagues. Earlier, they were resources for me. Earlier means pre-2013, before I had started running, they were resources. Almost treated them as machines. I have become far more humane. I have become far more empathetic. I have become far more understanding of their aspirations, their constraints. I have started understanding that not everybody is built the same. Even when they are, not everybody has the same starting line or ending point. They are all living in their own context. Somebody is having a relationship problem. Somebody is having a health problem. We don't even know how much of stress one is dealing with. So the Sundeep of pre-2013 was very harsh on people without acknowledging what they are going through. The Sundeep of now is far more empathetic, is far more understanding, is far more accommodating, is probably a nicer person to work with. And that, I think, has reflected in the way teams want to work with me. I mean, I can see the shift. People feel happy when they get to work with me. They don't say it, but I feel that shift. So maybe it's because what running has done to me. That's maybe one of the things which I feel like has transformed me in a very big way.
Sundeep, how old are you?
43.
You have a really long way to go. You're so wise. So wise. Amazing.
Thank you so much.
And I love your statement that I wanted to spread a message of, I think you said right to breathe.
Right to breathe, correct.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
Because that's something we just don't look at. You know, what hell we are living in.
yeah, yeah.
And this is they also talked about it. They were only talking about our environment and those kind of things.
Yeah.
So were you able to spread this message?
Absolutely.
And what happened after that?
I broke my foot for a change. That's what happened to me personally. But I think I did manage to spread the word. Of course, I would be lying if I said it became like a big transformational change. But at least in the circles that I live in, people are far more conscious. People are far more sensitive about these topics. And that's the other thing that I've learned, that success, as Karan was describing, cannot be measured by the outcomes. You know, right? So I would be, as I said, I would be lying if I said that it changed, that made a difference in a big way. No, maybe not even in a small way, because we still live in the same air. We still haven't changed anything. But I still feel myself as successful because I did my bit. I continue to do my bit. And even when my foot was broken and fractured, I still ran half marathon on that day. You know, that to me was a big deal. I kind of limped on one leg and finished it. You know, there were times when I said that my shoe would not fit. I ran barefoot. There were times when I was down with fever. I ran with fever. There were times when I was traveling for work. By the way, Karan, I did not take a break. I actually worked in those days. I was traveling to Dublin for a client visit. And the day was such that I was landing there at 9:30 p.m. and the day was going to come to an end, and I had been in the flight the whole day. And that day's half marathon was pending. So I ran from the airport to the hotel and back to airport and then back to hotel to finish that day's half marathon. Beautiful. You know, so I feel like those were the things which I feel proud of.
A quick question here. Sorry to interrupt.
He's been waiting.
Oh, no.
Please give him a chance.
Thank you.
Can he ask first? Can he ask
Yeah, I
first?
think,
Because his hand's been
go ahead.
raised.
No, it seems like an urgent question. Let him.
No, it's okay. No problem.
Okay. So amazing session. I think couple of takeaways, but something really important that struck me was we talk about introspection, right? The entire self-awareness piece. But kind of curious more from a coach perspective and your own perspective, how do you kind of define the line between overthinking and the actual, end result that really comes out? Because at least my own experience talks more about you kind of go down that rabbit hole and there's no stopping that because it'll keep on diverging. So how do you kind of stop that? How do you come to a final conclusion? This is where I started from as an introspection journey. This is the result I'm either hoping for or, I don't know, expected.
So it's a beautiful question, and thank you for asking that question. I genuinely mean that because it's a tough question to answer, and the answer will depend from one individual to the other. Here's what I would say. I would say that thinking versus overthinking. I think what needs to qualify it is the motivation behind it. If your motivation behind thinking / overthinking, and I'm intentionally using that slash there, is to find a solution, you will know where to stop and go ahead with it. Even if it is a half-baked solution, even if it is not perfect, even if all boxes haven't been ticked. But if you're going in position into that thinking, is to try and, in the name of trying to find a solution, to try and delay what is obvious and not confront the whispers you can hear, but you still don't want to call them out. Then you will get into a situation where, and I speak for myself, that you go into a circular motion. Then there is no way out of that loop. And the loop ultimately degenerates into a rabbit hole, right? So I would say that it depends on your motivation when you start that process of thinking. And if If you think it helps, if you think it can help, then have a conversation partner. Because a conversation partner will identify and show you the mirror, help you see when he thinks or she thinks that you're slipping into a certain zone. The choice will still always be yours. He's not going to intervene and say that don't do this, right? But there's a certain amount of transparency, accountability, showing a mirror that a partner can do. But ultimately, it's a very unique thing. It's very individual, context dependent. Does that answer somewhere? Yeah.
Thanks, Karan, and thank you, everyone. I know there are tons of questions in the room. Unfortunately, we're just up on time. However, Sundeep and Karan are not going anywhere. You can definitely catch them in the corridor right after the session if you wanted to have answer more questions. I now call Archana to just facilitate both our speakers.
Yeah, I would like to call upon stage Deepika and Mr. Rahul Vaswani, please.
Yeah, we can take a